Most of the western border of Vermont is found along the shores of Lake Champlain. The Champlain Valley is an area of beautiful rolling farmlands and a lot of recreation sites. Lake Champlain itself has been called America's sixth Great Lake. From the Narrows down by Ticonderoga up to the wide-parted Burlington, the lake provides a never-ending show of romantic shorelines and quiet bays. Along the northern reaches, its rocky shoreline often reminds people of the Maine coast, but without the lobster traps. Mallett's Bay is a favorite boating harbor, and farther north are the islands of Grand Isle and South and North Hero. The heroes were named for the Revolutionary War heroes Ethan and Ira Allen. This part of the lake is known for its fishing, and Charlie Clark runs a small fishing camp in North Hero. If you're lucky, he might take you out to find some bass.
Of course, I was born and brought up on the shores of Lake Champlain. As a matter of fact, right in this house. I was born in this house. And I've been a kid here and fished all my life. It's great for fishing because we have so many species of fish. Primarily, it's a warm water fishery. But we have the bass, both large and smallmouth. We have northern pike, walleyes. I'm just skimming it along the bottom. It's a good way to fish bass. The lake changes hourly from the winds, the shift of the winds, the color of the water, and I don't mean black, white, blue. It's dark, it's silver, it's blue, it's gray. It's got a certain ripple to it. It tells you something. I don't know if there's any particular trick, knowing where the bass are, knowing their habitat. And you can fish all day out here and never come within a mile of one, but I think you got to know where they are. And I take people out fishing and they say, how do you know? Well, of course I was born and brought up here, but really to the natives they're not much of a secret because the natives know these spots too, but only to the natives.
What can be better? The geese over my shoulder and a nice bass on the line. That's a nice bass too.
About mid-lake is Burlington. It's Vermont's biggest city and is considered northern New England's cultural center. Downtown is a pedestrian mall where a lot happens on nice afternoons. And at the Battery on the city's lakeshore, you can watch the ferries leave for New York State and the sunset over the Adirondacks across the lake. South of Burlington is the old mill village of Vergennes. And there's Middlebury, home to Middlebury College. The marble works here have recently added a commercial attraction. And just out of town is the state's oldest, still used covered bridge. Up in Shelburne in the 1920s, summer resident Electra Webb began to collect some of the folk arts that she found in the surrounding villages. Then she started getting some of the locals to help her with this endeavor, and the collection grew into the Shelburne Museum. Today, this is one of the finest collections of folk arts in America. Celia Oliver is one of the curators.
I think people of all ages enjoy coming to Shelburne Museum because it's not a classic historic village. It's not set up entirely with period homes. There's variety and interest here, and it's also set in a really wonderful, beautiful pastoral setting. These houses were brought here in a time before the historic preservation movement had begun and before people recognized the value in saving historic houses on their sites. The Stagecoach Inn now houses a very important collection of folk sculpture, including trade figures, weather vanes, whirligigs, really wonderful variety of objects that people no longer see in the American countryside, but once it served as an advertising medium for people. The cigar store Indians, for instance, served as a notice to passerbys that here was a shop where they could buy tobacco and other smoking paraphernalia. And that's very typical of the way that Electra Webb used the buildings here at Shelburne Museum. The Horseshoe Barn, for instance, is a copy of a barn in Quebec in the horseshoe shape, and then she built it to house her father-in-law's collection of horse-drawn vehicles. As you walk through the covered bridge, you'll see the Charlotte Meeting House and a few period homes, and then in the northern corner of the property is the weaving shed, where two weavers work here throughout the season. In here we have two looms that would have been used in the home in the 1700s and into the 1800s. We also have the Jacquard loom, which is the forerunner of the computer. This was the first time that information was stored on cards. These cards work the way computer cards did. They go up and around a cylinder, and on the far side of the cylinder there's a set of rods that hits each card and either goes through a hole in the card or not. And that picks up the threads or not to make the pattern. One of the reasons that the weaving shed is so important to us here at Shelburne Museum and having resident weavers working is we have a very major collection of American textiles. Everything from quilts, blankets, coverlets, costumes, a very important collection here, one of the largest on public display in the country. One of Electra Webb's early loves was circus material, and we have a wonderful miniature circus done by Edgar Kirk, who worked on the Pennsylvania Railroad and built this circus for his children in his spare time. The general store is unique to the Shelburne Museum and to many other museums because it houses the original contents that was there when it was moved here in the early 1950s.
Well, you'll find anything from horse collars to corsets in this building. And like the old gentleman would say, if we don't have it, you don't need it.
Many of our buildings are working exhibits. The weaving shed, the blacksmith shed, for instance. And there's also people who actually worked in the trades that they are describing. So you have people really wanting to talk with you and have you enjoy your visit. One of the most unique pieces of Americana here at the Shelburne Museum is the steamer Ticonderoga, which was originally launched in 1906 on Lake Champlain, which is just over the hills to the west, and operated on the lake for almost 50 years as a passenger and freight steamer. And she did day trips north and south on the lake. The Colchester Lighthouse, which now sits here at the Shelburne Museum, once sat in the middle of Lake Champlain in Mallett's Bay, and during her life on the lake, the tie passed the Colchester Lighthouse almost daily, and now they sit side by side. One of the things that Electra Webb was really interested in when she was building the Shelburne Museum was helping people learn about American and Vermont history in an easy way by seeing the artifacts and antiques and tools and furniture and decorative arts that they used every day in their homes to learn about history from a personal perspective, and I think that's what we have here.